Hey folks, I want to talk to you today about feathering and why you shouldn't use it. Well, shouldn't say that, but you should be thinking about when you apply it, because the main way of using feathering is actually a pretty permanent kind of non-flexible way of working. And as you know, I like to try and do things in the most flexible way possible, just in case. So here's a pretty simple example. Let's say I was trying to do some effect with this photograph where I wanted to select a portion of it and have it have really soft edges. Well, this feather command up here, you notice I left it at 0. And this is sort of point 1, is if you put the feathering up there, that means from now on, every time you use this tool, in this case the marquee tool, it will always have feather. So if you end up feathering a selection, I would suggest you do it this way. Make a selection first, and then you can either go to the select menu and choose modify feather. There's also a keyboard shortcut, Shift F6. What I usually just do is control or right click and choose feather this way. So this is adding feather onto your selection. The challenge, of course, with feathering is what on earth do you type in? The fact that it's saying 80 is not a recommendation. That just happens the last time I used this, I must have used 80. So how do you know? You type in 25. Don't know anything yet, no preview, click OK. All that happens is the corners get slightly rounded. So in order to be able to see it, we have to do something with it. For example, if I took the move tool and were to drag and drop this onto a different image, then we kind of get the idea of what that's giving us. If we don't like it, well, we pretty much have to do multiple undos to get to the point where we get something we like. So that's a bit of a problem. So my suggestion to you, and this part here specifically relates to Photoshop CS5 and the masks panel, is a huge advantage of doing it this way. So what we do is we make our basic selection and then we add a layer mask. Now if you're on the background layer, you'd have to unlock the background first. My image happens to be unlocked. So I click on the add mask button. And at this point, I'm just going to drag this over, which will drag both the entire photograph and the layer mask. So I get that. The advantage in doing it this way, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the mask is still separate. So let me actually rephrase this. If I hide the mask, you can see the entire photograph's there. So that's one good thing, is I don't have to worry about having made any permanent decisions because I can always play with the mask. So for example, if I go to the mask and I turn off the link symbol, so this way I'm only working on the layer mask, I can free transform the mask, therefore hiding more of the image. So I can kind of make an adjustment that way, which is pretty nice. But since we're talking about feathering, the equally important thing is I can also go to the masks panel in CS5, and here's a feather command, but the difference is this is feathering that first of all you can see, so you can play with it and kind of decide what you like, and second, and very importantly, it stays that way. This is editable feathering. You'll notice there's no OK button. You just leave it at whatever amount of feather and then you come back. So of course what we can do now is play with this. Go back to the layer mask, free transform the mask a little more to see what that looks like. I'm kind of liking that a little bit more. Maybe push it in. I could even click on the warp tool and start to warp the mask, so I'm not just getting a rectangle anymore, I'm getting a more interesting shape. So that's another advantage of doing it this way. The bottom line is this: when you're tempted to simply go selection feather, think about this possibility. Now, I gotta be honest, there are times where if I'm touching up an image and I just want to make a quick feathered selection to borrow some pixels or something, that's fine. But for any situation like this where you're trying to blend in something and give yourself the most options, I would suggest that instead of using feather here as a select method, use feather here in the mask panel, because that way you can have a huge amount of control and flexibility.